so excited here today because we are getting into the writing classes, and this is really where the HMH co-op started from, really. And so this, and then reading right behind it. And I think if we let all of the students vote, this wins like the Students' Choice Awards would be the writing classes. And so I'm really excited. You guys have revamped and done so much with this. So I'm excited to share all of this, but I want to go ahead and introduce. We have Miss Dorothy, AKA Nan, my mom, here, who started this. And then your co-teacher there, Travis, and everything that you've kind of come in to do. And then Kaelyn, who has been kind of right here. You guys have been like the fantastic trio bringing this all together with these classes. So I'd love to kind of turn it over to you, let you all introduce yourselves, and then we can get into the 3 different writing classes that we have, what they bring, why we do it this way, what your student can expect, and kind of what to expect as a parent here through this. Because I think, again, this is an area that we actually have gone through a lot of struggle on the homeschool parent side and have seen immense benefit out of these classes. And so I am totally a champion of you guys and these classes and what they've what they've brought on for our kids and our families. So Mom, I'll hand it over to you, let you kind of introduce yourself and let you guys go around and let us know, who you are and how you found yourself here.
Okay. Well, I'm of course Miss Dorothy. I'm Heidi's mom, Travis's grandma, and I'm Kaelyn's nan by being a bonus grandma. And of course, I was a professional. I actually was a, private school teacher, adult ed teacher, and mostly an elementary teacher from kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th. I've pretty much done all, I think, except, no, not 5th, but 6th anyway, all but 5th grade. I love it. I've always loved teaching. I love the kids, but several years ago, I said, okay, we need to do something different. I was semi-retired, and Heidi decided, no, you need to not be retired. So we started this, and it really did start with me just kind of working with the grandkids, and then Heidi's grand idea of having a co-op. She kind of said, hey, I've kind of always had this idea, and so she made things, and I said, oh, Heidi, what if they don't come? She goes, I don't know. Then you all came, and we have been jamming and busy ever since. One of the things all the kids wanted to do was writing. And so we made a writing class, and we just got together and we just kind of all wrote. And then we really started talking about the process of, wait a minute, what needs to be going on in these classes? How best can we serve the students where they're at? And then I really stepped back and really, I've had a couple of schools I went to where they had some great writing programs. So I kind of drew from there, and then kind of whittled it down to what I had already experienced and what I'd already taught to also Brave Writer. And all of a sudden, I can't think of her name.
Julie Bogart, is that right?
I think it is. Yep, Julie Bogart. And so I really believe in what she's doing out there as well. But we're only doing one part of what she does, and that's creative writing. So that is our focus, and I'm going to explain why later. But here I am teaching writing classes. I love it. This has been amazing.
It really has. Travis, you want to let us know a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm Travis, and I was around in those early stages when it was just getting going, and it wasn't really a co-op. It was just kind of like a, hey, let's all get on a video call and we'll talk about something for a minute. And I started off with, I never liked writing. I always hated it until I realized that, especially writing on a computer, when you have something that will correct a lot of your misspelled words, you can start creating a lot of really cool things. So I really started enjoying that, and I started writing little historical documents about different, characters that we were learning about and writing about in the early days. And then as it went on, I started doing more creative writing, and I've been with it for I don't know how many years now, but it's been a long time. And now I've gotten to a point where I am no longer, a member of the class in the way of being a student, but now I'm, helping teach some stuff and imparting some of the things that I've gone on to learn throughout my process of all of this. So
I think that's been so awesome to see you kind of go through it, right? Where we started off we'll be honest. We started off because I couldn't get you to write. We'll talk more about this in a minute. And I was like, Mom, help. I don't know what to do. And now not only are you writing so much, but you've now graduated high school yourself and are here helping, you know, in this like role as well. So I think it's been really neat to see that full circle. But then we'll turn it over to Kaelyn. And just a fun fact here too. Kaelyn is really a bonus daughter to me, bonus granddaughter to Nan, because Kaelyn and Travis have known each other since they were teeny tiny little kiddos. And we're just kind of all family in that kind of God ordained way. And so I think it works out even cooler now that Kaelyn, you know, got here into all of this and you love doing it. And now, you know, seeing you guys all come together. So I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and tell your story a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Kaelyn. I was pulled out of school in 2nd grade because I was struggling a lot of different things. My grades immediately shot up, but I definitely always struggled with language arts and couldn't find any motivation for it, which is always a key factor when teaching your students or when teaching your kids towards the beginning, is finding what motivates them and encouraging them through that. And eventually, it took a while, but eventually I found my motivation factor. And I wrote my first book when I was 13, but I still needed help and I still needed to build on my skills. And so Miss Dorothy, or Nan, basically I was voluntold to join the class, and I did. And working with my peers and working with my teacher, that really helped me grow. And that's what then turned my passion into helping now my students grow in their writing and in finding what motivates them and what makes them happier. And so ultimately, that's just the goal, is both educating them, but also finding a way to make everybody comfortable through the process.
And I think you guys have done such a great job with that. I mean, even just, you know, I have younger kids that are in y'all's classes, and then even just hearing, you know, the conversations going on, you know, with you all about this, like, I think you guys have done a really great job, because I think for the students coming in, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, right? When you come in and you're like, I don't know. And maybe you have written something before, maybe you haven't written something, like, you know, it can be a little intimidating, I think, from the student's perspective. And I think that's what's neat to share, is that both Travis and Kaelyn have started from that place of, I don't know, you know, like, I'm not too sure. I've had my own struggles or my own things. I'm maybe a little shy. I've written a story, but I don't know if I'm ready to share it with everyone. Like, you guys have been in that position. And so I think that is a great aspect of having you guys here helping in these classes, because you've been in the students' shoes quite literally, and are still learning and growing and doing all of that. And so I think you guys bring a very valuable piece in that, and how you're there to, you know, help, you know, it can come alongside and be like, no, I get it. I quite genuinely get it. So I know we kind of restructured the writing classes a little bit here this past year, because we have had so many students come into this and wanting to grow and wanting to do this. And so Nan, do you want to kind of tell us about the first level of writing, and you and Kaelyn can kind of talk us through that a little bit and what you guys do there in that first level, and who best that would work for?
Okay. Well, the first level is the novice level, and that's really for everybody. Age-wise, you just need to be able to come in and, you know, and be old enough that you're ready to, you know, you're writing. You can write a little bit, and I'm talking about just basic stuff. What we do is we're going to be practicing typing this year. We are also going to be really learning how to make our own Google documents and how to use Google Doc this year, or Google Drive, sorry. So, so that they become more comfortable. So they do need to have access to that themselves. It's okay if you use your parents. I'm okay with that. But I always say that if you're going to do anything with the co-op, it's always best to make either a family one where you can come in and the whole family can use it. And then you can, you know, you can have a drive with a folder that's all your stuff, you know, but they need to know how to access that. They also need to know how to type so that they can, you know, start learning how to actually get that down. I do have a few students that still like to write their stuff down first and then put it into a document, you know. But we really want the kids to be doing this independently themselves. It's, you know, not that we don't want the parents to also be a part of that, because there are times when they should be reading it to you, that sort of thing. But for the novice, what we're going to be doing in there is, we're going to talk about this, but it's really learning to get our brains to make the connections it needs to make, which is very important. This is writing is a learned skill. It's not like you wake up one day and it's just there. It doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of practice. And the first thing you have to do is train the neurons in your brain to make the connections so that it goes from your head to your fingers, and you can take whatever's in your thoughts and actually write them down. So we do that by doing some exercises in class. And then we also have, we do little mini short stories. We do all kinds of things, learning the basis of writing, short stories, all creative stories. So it's a lot of fun. That's the main thing. It's supposed to be a lot of fun. So that's what we're doing. So parents can expect that they can get onto a computer, access a document. That what's really cool about Google is I can see it while they're doing it. Kaelyn and I can go in there and leave comments, so we can help the student. You can do it live while they're on there as well, which is super cool. Or, they do it and then we get on and we leave our comments afterwards. So they get that one-on-one help within their story, but at the same time, it's really cool because later on they can even share their stories if they prefer. So Google is a wonderful tool that we use for that.
Yeah, I love how you guys all get on and you use that, right? So online, they can be on and they can be typing, and you guys do the fun prompts and activities and things, because it's a learned skill to be able to get those thoughts from your head onto the paper. And then I love, Kaelyn, I know when you volunteer in there and sitting down with the students and kind of helping them walk through, the things that they've typed up and working together with them in ways of, just that peer-to-peer connection of, sometimes we think we know what we're talking about, but then somebody else reads it and maybe they didn't quite get it, right? So having that where someone goes, "Ooh, what did you mean by this?" And you're like, "Oh, that's right. I was thinking this," but, just kind of help in that way of getting it together, I think is really neat to see. I know I have a kid in this class and it's like, oh yeah, the lights go on as you figure out how to communicate those things effectively, through your writing. So I think you guys, the novice class is really fun.
That the whole goal of the novice class is, everything Miss Dorothy said, along with their learning, how to, I'm trying to find the words, how to write in their own unique way, because everybody has a different writing style. And so the very beginning is them figuring out, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to learn how to put it on paper, but it's going to be my ideas. And we heavily encourage their imagination, because starting off from that age or from that level and then building up on it will just make them so much better in the future.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I completely agree. That's fantastic, because it's fine. It's not just step 1, step 2, right? Go through the lesson here. It's finding your own way, right? God's given each and every one of us a gift and a voice and a talent. So finding yours and growing in that is really important. All right. So I know Kaelyn, poor thing, she had to go because there's more co-op classes going on. So we'll let her go and we'll continue through. But I think it's so great that she's there to help you in that novice class, again, working through with the kids and really just those foundational key things. And I wanted to add a point to, you said about Google. We use Google because it's so easily accessible by everybody. We have families in the co-op across the country and even internationally. And so really is the easiest free software we can use with great security measures in place. I know for our family, what we started doing, just as a parent tip here, because with writing, obviously you as the teacher, you need to be able to see what they're doing. And so Google's great because they can start a Google document, and as they're typing, you can see what's happening, right? You can share it with one another. It's not just public out there for anyone. It's with you specifically. And so you can work on things together. If Travis, if they're partnering with you or Kaelyn, you guys can be on there working on it together, leaving comments, helpful tips, seeing things like that. And what's really great is, like, for us, we went ahead and set up a free Gmail account for each and every one of our kids, because, we have 3 of our 4 kids were in this class. And I use the, I'm going to double check the name just so I say it right. I use the parent link. Is that what this thing is called? Hold on. Maybe I don't know what it's called. Family Link, not Parent Link. Okay, I use Family Link is the app I have, where I've put all of my kids' email addresses into it. And it allows me to, it's a free app from Google. It allows me to see what websites they can access or they are accessing, what apps they use, things like that. But it allows us to keep all of the accounts linked together. And I can set up our safety parameters and things like that. Of course, I have conversations with my kids about these things, and they use it for co-op, and they know that, right? So like that's what they're using it for. But it allows you a way to kind of, again, if you want to just have a parents like general family account, you can, but especially if you have multiple kids in these classes and they're all using it, it can get a little confusing when you're trying to figure out who's on what and has, you know, the thing. And so we just made each of our kids their own email address. They use it for co-op. I have everything linked together with our family link, and it makes it really quite simple to kind of keep it all together and organized. So just a little tip for the parents there on that. But I love that. So as soon as my kid is starting to write, that possessing the ability to write sentences, they could really be ready for this class, because you're going to kind of start from ground zero and build up, I think is important. And I guess maybe before we get into the next levels, I think it's important to add that sometimes as a homeschool parent, our child's willingness to do these things isn't always the same as their skill set and ability. So what I found most interesting is, I know I've heard from parents and they go, oh, my kid hates writing. You know, I can't put him in the writing class, or hates reading. You know, I think we've heard it on both things. I've had kids that hated writing and reading. They were put in this class. And now, you know, Travis up here is a published author. So I definitely speak in this, that sometimes our kids, I think, really don't like it. And really what we have found so often is they don't like it for some different reasons. And it's finding the root of those reasons and addressing them. And Nan, I'll let you kind of talk to this point here. But I know that I always thought that teaching writing was all about teaching grammar. I bought lots of different curriculums. We use lots of different programs. There's this kind of like traditional language arts approach that I always thought, you know, well, you have to write a research paper. You have to write a bit. Like I had this idea through my own education and through the curriculums I was finding of like, this is how one does the thing. And we really came at this with a much, Mom, came at this with a much different approach. And it was like fireworks went off. And what I think is so cool now is we've continued to repeat this with, you know, these classes and all the students that have come in, and you're seeing the same success with all of them. And so I know you touched on a little bit, but especially starting in this first class, because it's not about having a specific grammar curriculum. It's not about worksheets. It's not about these things. You take a different approach. So maybe kind of to wrap up the novice level and then moving up into the next one, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that, right? Why do you do this different approach? Is it okay? Well, because also as homeschool parents, we're always worried we're ruining our kids, right? Like I want to do the best for my kids. I don't want to mess them up. So if they're not doing a bunch of grammar worksheets, and this isn't like, you know, kids aren't required to do a grammar curriculum before they come into this, how does all of that work?
Well, that's a good question. Let me just say this. My last year that I was actually teaching in the public school, I was in 6th grade, and I was the reading writing teacher. Okay, 6th grade, mind you. And they were great teachers, and I know that they worked with these kids, all the way through. And I had close to 70 kids in all 3 classes. Okay, and out of those, I probably had 2 that actually could write well enough that probably could try different things, right? And they did well. But about 70 to 75% of them could not write a real sentence. How do you get from kindergarten to here and be that far off? And so I used to ask them, and I'll tell you, every time I'd say, okay, let's get out. We're working on a research paper. Oh, good grief. The grumbling and the whining and I thought, oh, you guys, come on. They spent more time researching because they would rather read about stuff and they don't like to read, but I made reading fun, so they really didn't mind. But when it came to writing, they really complained. So I said, what's the problem? Well, when I started really looking at their writing and really looking through it, one, it's not fun because it's really hard. And when I looked at their writing, I saw why. Their writing was so bad because they didn't understand a lot of things. They had huge gaps in their learning. And so I thought about that a lot when you asked me, when Trav's like, I'm not writing for Mom, I don't want to do it. So we had some talks, and he was saying, it is hard. It is hard. And it could be that they have a disability. It could be that, they have like dysgraphia or dyslexia, or, maybe they're just missing gaps of phonemic awareness kind of things where they don't know how to spell. And when you're trying to write, that makes it difficult, right? So it could be something as simple or something as, intense as any of those things. And so when we were talking, I said, okay, let me tell you what I found the best to really work with kids is when you step back and you just write for fun. Well, then Heidi gave me the Brave Writer book, and I did a bunch of research on her. If you ever want them to learn beyond this, that's where I send everybody. But I am telling you, the first thing kids have to do is they have to be able to go back and they have to learn how to make connections in their brain. If they don't do that, you're pushing a boulder uphill, and you are then detrimental to their educational experience. It really is. I have people ask me all the time, what do you do for grammar? What do you do for spelling? What do you do for, I'm like, you want to know the secret? I'll tell you the secret. You need to read with your child. Travis was in high school. You need to read with your child. You read out loud, they read out loud. They need to hear themselves. They need to hear you. You want them to be really good at grammar and spelling? You read to them. They read to you. You get to a sentence and they're like, really, they're reading a word and you're like, okay, well, what do you think that word means? You're kind of stumbling over that one. Let's see, what could it mean? How would it sound? And then you tell them if they don't get it, and then they go, now, how does that make sense in the sentence? And then it's like, you go on. You don't jump in and start going, well, if that was a this and this was a that, and you've got the pronouns and and all the different grammar things that need to be in a sentence, right? Or how sentence structure should go. You don't go there. They actually are learning that when they hear you read it out loud. Because a parent's not going to read something like this. A parent's going to use fluency. They're going to use their voice. They're going to use, they're going to stop for punctuation and do it correctly. And guess what? All of that teaches them that. Then what you do after they start writing and they've really learned how to get information from here down to paper, you let it go on, and then you go back a little at a time. That's when you teach that lesson, okay? You don't do it before they have any experience with it, and they're not going to have experience with it in a sentence format. I did that. I tried it. It don't work. It needs to be within a story. You really want to help your child grow. It really comes from reading out loud all the way through high school with your child. Besides that, it's a great opportunity for you guys to bond. It's a great opportunity to really understand where they're at. And if you notice something, that's what we're for. And you say, hey, Miss Dorothy, what about this is what they're doing? I'm like, oh, well, this is what they're missing, and let's get it in there so we can make it work. And so that's why we only do creative stories, because let me tell you, it is so important. I had a great resource when I was back in California, and she taught me so much about how the brain works. And thank goodness the Lord sent her to me, like my last year of teaching in California, and she taught me so much. And if you don't make those connectors, let me tell you, then even in high school, you're going to have to go all the way back. And you know what? It's okay. That's why we don't put in really an age limit on our classes, because it's really about where is the child and what do they know, what do they don't know, and how can we get them to where they want to, how to make them competent, right? To master the goals that they need in between.
It really makes such a difference. It does. And you're so right. Even Travis and I, even in high school, like we would read the same book, we'd read books together, even some then he would read some on his own, but we would read, a chapter a day, and then we'd come together and talk about it. Right. So even that, like that growth in between of, oh, you saw that. I didn't see that. How did you see that? Right. So I was able to see so much of his comprehension, of his thought process, of all of that when we would come back and forth. Plus, like you said, it was an amazing bonding opportunity for the both of us, because we'd sit down, have a cup of coffee in the morning, and talk about this or talk about that. Sometimes we wouldn't see eye to eye on something, and we're like, no way. How did you, whatever, we'd have like our thing for that. And, we still talk about that in certain books. He has them in on his shelf, and sometimes the sisters will be in there looking. He's like, oh, you want a great book? And it's always, one of those books that we read, because he didn't like to read. And so, when we would have those books we did together, that was always far more, fun for him, in that way of doing that. And you're so right, where I was so focused on the grammar, the curriculum, those pieces that, well, you have to do this first, and, he would write what he had to get done with the assignment. But I'm like, no, add descriptive words. Where's your adjectives? And he was like, I don't care, like, I don't want to do this. And now, fun mom moment. He's a published author now, and we have his book at our local library, and I'm going to make him blush. But his sister, his 6-year-old sister that can't read yet, checked his book out from the library, because how cute is she? It's it back there. Yeah. And she has me read it to her at night, because I sit down and read before we go to bed. It is the most descriptive book. I read it nice and loud so the whole house can hear, but it's now like the most descriptive. But it's just so funny to go, like, I had this kid who the dog walked, or whatever. And I'm like, how did where's our adjectives, right? Like, I'm trying to do all those things. And he was like, he had no motivation and no interest to put all these pieces together. Now I'm reading this book that is, I have the picture clear as day in my head, because he's done so well and it is so descriptive. But you're right. This is how all of us learn, though. If there's no motivation, there's no reason, there's no thing like connecting it to us. Come on, let's be honest. That's not what I go learn about. That's not what I focus on. That's not what I do, right? When now all of a sudden I have a reason and a purpose, and there's something there, which I think you've done such a great job with in these classes. These kids are like, oh, I see it now. I see it, right? I got that first part down. You made it super fun. It wasn't intimidating. I'm getting my stuff down. And now you're right. In my head, Kaelyn, I know, did this, and Travis, you did this too, where you guys were so frustrated at trying to write that you started drawing, right? You draw pictures, and Kaelyn did the same thing. You guys got very, into that, because everybody has a story they can tell, right? Yeah. Like, everybody has something. How do I get that out? And sometimes writing's so hard. So I know you guys were like, I'll just go draw it, like, I'll do it that way. But then even those pictures, they weren't properly conveying all you had in here. So you needed those words to get it out. And so once Nan was able to give you these tools to get those words from your head out onto paper, the stories came alive, So, so Novice there is kind of that very beginning, just starting to put words down, kind of building that kind of foundational aspect of writing. What would be the next level? And can you also kind of explain a little bit, just so I understand from the parent aspect, how does one go from one spot to the next, right? So Novice, what's our next level? How do I get there? What do you do there?
Okay. Well, the next level is what we call the Apprentice. The Apprentice level is where students have been, they've been writing, and they actually have found that they enjoy the process. And once they kind of realize that, and they're like, hey, I don't want to write little stories. I want to write better stories or greater stories, They're like, I have more to tell. And so what we have done is we now have a process. And so they email me, parents who email me, and then we go through an assessment. And they get to come online. We do a Zoom call. They have a document all set up. They have a prompt that they'll get to look at. We talk about it. They talk about it with whoever else is there. We all kind of share our ideas about the prompt. And so they get a little time to write some notes. And then from there, they kind of start developing an idea, just a quick idea. It's not going to be perfect, and we're not looking for that. We are looking for a beginning, middle, and end. We're looking to see, kind of what is the process that they go through, what are they lacking, what do they already have. So we kind of look at that afterwards. So what they do is they get 2 hours. They come on, we do all those things, and then the kids go into a breakout room. They turn off their mics and they type. And then I sit and watch all the documents as they're typing. They're allowed to stop and ask me questions. And it's lovely. It really is lovely. And so they, like I said, they get that full 2 hours. They do the assessment, and then I have my team, and then we sit down and we evaluate them. Are they really ready to devote that kind of time? Because the apprentice class devotes extra time outside of class a little bit. We try not to make it like the next class, but we do want them to be thinking about that, even if it's writing in a book or adding some stuff to their document as we go on. And then go ahead, Travis. I was going to just add you.
I would say that if the novice class is for the beginning writer and the learning writer, which you're always learning, but yeah, for the beginning writer, I would say that the apprentice class is for the committed writer. Like, you have gone from that point to where, you're kind of just learning and you're kind of, seeing and different things like that. And you're at that first step. And then the apprentice class is like, okay, like, let's get serious about this now.
Right. That's a good point.
I think that's a great one, and interesting enough, because I think most of you kids who started in what was like the novice level when we first started this, I think half of you were being like Kaelyn said, voluntold that you were taking that class. Well, a couple others were like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm interested in it. Yeah. But really, because it was such a fun, you're building foundational things, but in a fun way, you all really did graduate up to the apprentice level because you really started to love it. You love to be able to get your thoughts out onto paper. It was, me, and if I brought the other moms in here, we'd all agree that our problem is now that you guys spend too much time writing, and we're like, hey, can y'all take a break? And if that class could go on for 3-4 hours, I know you guys would, because we're like, y'all need to get off, okay? You'll come back to this. I promise you'll have more time. We have other things to do too. But it's because you guys found in such a fun way to start putting this down. So I think, Travis, that's a great way to say it, with the difference between kind of novice and apprentice is novice is really that beginning of, maybe I don't have the skill set. Maybe I'm not sure if I like it. Maybe it's a combination of both, right? Let's work on those areas. And then apprentice is for those kids then that are like, no, I'm enjoying this. I want to keep writing. I want to keep growing. I have that, I believe wholeheartedly in child-led education. If it's something our children are interested in, you can't stop them from learning, right? We ended up saving a bunch of tadpoles out of our pool, and now our whole family has spent the whole summer learning everything we can about everything a tadpole needs, because we're now fostering 7,000 frogs. We're getting ready to have our own plague of Egypt, here in the backyard. So when we found out that the library was doing a presentation, a herpetology presentation, we were like, sign us up. We couldn't get there fast enough. We were so excited, right? But I think it's the same thing, that the more you kids worked on this, you guys were like, wow, I'm enjoying this. I want to write more. The stories in my head, I can see it. I want to get it out on paper. I want to work on my skill, and all of that started to come together. So, having that extra level now, that there is the master's class, that again, it's not about age, right? It's about coming in and writing and showing kind of, going for apprentice. Sorry, what did I call it?
It's okay. The master's class. That's nice.
Wrong. Sorry, not there. With the apprentice class, right? That once you guys, I noticed both of you were looking at me funny, and I'm like, why are you looking so weird? Because I don't know the names of the classes. That's why. Okay. In fairness, I have kids in almost every single class, so I think that is where I goof it up the most, because I've got a kid for reading too. I've got one in almost every level, so I'm like, wait, which one? But I think it is so cool that you have that foundational piece, and then as you're growing and you're becoming a little more confident in your skill level, and you're actually enjoying it, wanting it to grow, you can go up to the apprentice class. And so what, I want you guys to go ahead, as a student in the apprentice class, what exactly do you do? How is that different from the first level? What are you guys doing here?
Would you like me to explain now?
Yes, go ahead, Travis.
Or start at least. So as you said, obviously as to the tool set you need to go to the apprentice class. It's, that like that growing passion, that growing interest. That's very important, because even if you are still trying to learn the like specific skills of like grammar or like how to create stories and how to put them all together, I feel like as long as you have the passion, you can really do anything, because you have the desire and the want to learn. And I feel like that's so key in the apprentice class, because that's like the stepping stone to like the final level, and you need to have that sort of passion in it. So I think that's really important. But as to what we do in the apprentice class, I would kind of say that in the beginning, with a lot of our lessons, for when people first get on, it's almost like we are building a box, and we're saying, okay, this is how you write a book. This is how, what you're supposed to do for the genres. This is how character development, like you're kind of setting up all of the rules. And you're setting up the box for everybody to sit in and to, understand. And then once the class gets a hold of the rules and the nuances and all the things of actually writing, like a full-on book and a full-on story, then it's like, okay, now how do we get out of the box? Because yes, we've established all the rules and we know like the regular things you're supposed to do and the protocol and all that, but now how do we twist some stuff around? How do we get out of the box? How do we break some pieces into it? How do we do something unique and fun? And it's kind of that balance of setting up the rules, setting up the concepts and all that, and then trying to figure out how to twist the rules. And I think it's a really fun balance to strike, and it's a really fun thing to play with. So we'll sometimes do a lot of, fun activities where we'll say, okay, let's write, a prompt in a genre that you're not even familiar with, that you haven't even worked on. In our last class, I put all the different genres on a spinning wheel, and I spun the wheel for everybody, and that was their thing, and it was so fun, and everyone excelled, when I would say the majority of the class did not have a genre they were familiar with. And I think, again, just real quick, it's important to note that like we do creative writing. Like that's the type of writing we do. You are trying to make something in your head and get it out. But I also feel like that doesn't exclude something like historical fiction, where you're writing a creative story about something that really happened, maybe even with people who were really real. But I just wanted to mention that real quick because I thought of that. But going back to it, it's a lot of that. But then also, one thing that we value just as much as the passion and the growing capability, I would say, is the social thing, which I speak from a lot of experience, because I do not do so good with the whole social thing. I still don't do so good. I've now gotten to the point where I can say, hey, I think this is really good for me. I just hate every second of it, and I'm just angry. But I realize that it's good for me, so I'll play along. That's where I'm at now. So I've come a long way. But the social part is so important, because one thing we will do a lot in that class is get together in little breakout rooms where students will work with each other. Well, they'll talk with each other about their stories and exchange dialogue with each other about what they think could be improved, what they love so much. And honestly, there is no better way of growing than being able to talk with someone about your book. I would say that's how I was able to excel so well in the writing club, because once I had my passion and I was starting to learn and I had the know-how, I would start finding cracks in the system in our writing classes to try and speak with my peers as long as possible, and to try and talk about the stories as long as possible and get as much information as I possibly could. And I arranged meetings after and before class, and it was this whole big thing, because I loved it. And that's what we've really been trying to do with the apprentice classes now, is set up an organized system for how these kids can get together and they can discuss ideas and they can learn and grow with each other, separately away from everything, but then be able to come back and, do these lessons and these fun activities and things like that. And we're just really taking that growing passion to learn how to write books, how to write stories from your head. We're taking it and we're trying to grow it. We're trying to show you, hey, here are the rules. Here are the things to really elevate your story and not just make it, oh, that's so cute, I love that, to like, oh my gosh, this is a phenomenal story. So we're kind of showing how to get to that point while also enjoying the process, working with others. So I think that all is quite important. And I think it's really cool. It's an absolutely phenomenal class. Every single class that we've done with it so far has been absolutely amazing, and I feel like they're learning so much, and we're only continuing. So yeah, I think that's a good summary of kind of what we get up to. Do you think so, Mom?
Yeah, I think that really is, because it is so neat to see. And like you said, that aspect of even coming from you, who's like the most introvert of introvert, you know, coming in and having that peer space where you're working together and reading through and talking through. And even sometimes you guys will be on there in breakout rooms, just each typing and doing your own thing. But then you can pop on every once in a while and be like, hey, can I read you this sentence? Like, does this, like, this is what I'm trying to say. Does that work? You know, or whatever. Like, I see you guys, you know, you leave each other comments about, here's some great synonyms for this word. You know, you've used this word 3 times. I found these synonyms, you know, you might like some of them or whatever, you know, like just different little things like that. I know Nan will get on, you know, and she'll offer input and stuff. And it's up to you. And what I appreciate that too, because I know, you know, Travis, you just wrote your book where you had a whole team of peers helping you edit it. I even came in on the end and kind of went through it. And I appreciate too, you know, Kaelyn brought up the point in the beginning of it sticking to your voice. And I think because the goal here isn't to like complete a curriculum or whatever, it's to really meet you where you're at and lift you up in that. Obviously, Nan is your grandmother, so, you know, you have a much closer relationship. But I know when, you know, sometimes she would have suggestions for your book or your writing, and you were like, but that's not what I want there. You know what I mean? Like, it's great to get that advice and those things, but ultimately it's your voice being spoken. And so I really appreciate that in a class where each of you kids are being equipped, you're being encouraged, you're giving pointers and all of these wonderful, great things that you have. But at the end of the day, it's your story. What is the story you're trying to use? Like, is that really, that's how you want to say it in a discussion, right? Like, I don't care if that's not the proper grammar. Like, this is what my character would say, or this is the word that to me is what it needs to be, or what, you know, whatever it is. I love that Miss Dorothy, Nan, you know, your goal in all of this is to help the kids, equip the kids, but to lift them up where they're at. And you respect their, I feel like I'd be the mean teacher because I'm like, nope, that's not the way it goes. Boom, you're doing it this way. But I love so much that, you know, your goal has always been to lift them up where they're at. And if that's the way that you're trying to encourage them in that. Right. And I think that is so wonderful for our kids to hear, like, writing is just such an art form, you know, it really, truly is. And even those of us who think, well, writing's not that important, when am I ever really going to need this in life? Well, honestly, you're going to need it a lot, whether it's a business email, it's, you know, I mean, from simple things to bigger things, you know, there really is such a value to art. And I think especially living in a day and age where AI is taking over everything, you know what I mean? Like, AI might have a place, but it's never going to replace something coming from someone's heart, you know? And I think any of us who study, even like, you know, even taking it out of the biblical realm, but even going to like, you know, the greats, you know, Tozer and Pink and, you know, all these great, you know, theologians of the time, and just the words that they use to describe or share an experience or something, you know what I mean? Just go through those. I love reading the old George Mueller. He get his diary journal entries and stuff. And just, you know, I actually have a book of them up here that, you know, I can go through, but the words, right? Like those words that you can leave behind that speak in a way that no amount of technology, you know, is ever going to replace, because it doesn't come from a real heart, a real spirit. And I think that being able to, regardless of what job you might do in the future, wherever the Lord's path may lead you, being able to take those innermost feelings from your spirit and your heart and put them into a written form is going to be something that's never going to go away. And so, you know, I think, I mean, I know for me, I do YouTube videos because I don't have the time to sit down and write. I'm still having to take my head, the thoughts, get them out to my notebook here where I've scribbled down, you know, my note, you know, I'm still having to do that process. And so regardless of where your journey may take you, being able to take those thoughts and get them to paper is really important. And I love that here at the Apprentice, these kids have a space that they can go to to do that and work with their peers, work with a teacher, get ideas, and have a space to be challenged, but also encouraged, as they go through that, I think is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, yesterday we were talking about one of the things that we want these kids to be able to do is to think for themselves. In order to think for yourself, you have to be able to express yourself, what you're really thinking, what you're really meaning, right? And the writing is what takes it to the nth degree, because now they've learned, they've made all those connections, and now they can get it out. So it'll come out in their writing, it'll come out when they're speaking. So that's where that learned knowledge that we want them to have, like that biblical knowledge, if you really want them to be able to apply it, it comes out through the reading and the writing. They work in tandem. If you want them to be a good reader, they need to know how to write. If you want them to be a good writer, they have to know how to read. And they work together. And then you want them to be thinkers for themselves, which is my biggest thing. I've seen what happens in public school. They don't want them to think for themselves. This is their way to be able to do what we all want our kids to be able to do. And that is to, know who the Lord is and understand who he is and be able to apply it to their life. Well, that comes from the reading and writing. It's so important. And it's, and yes, I don't check grammar until the very end. There are books that we even publish with grammar that's not correct. But in the end, it's their story. And I would rather them publish something one year and it's not perfect, but it's their story and they've told it to the best of where they're at their ability. And then the next year you see growth because the next stories you're going to read are going to have more. So it's not that we never, apply any of that, but we apply it when it's needed. And sometimes there's a lot that's needed and we pick our battles and we pick the ones that we know that they're ready to learn. And we try to address all of them, but it just depends. But the whole thing is, they're growing, and it's where they're at. Because the worst thing you can do is tell a child, what in the world did you just write? Because that makes no sense, And you're like, you got to do this and this and this, and then they're like, oh, well, never mind. What are they going to say?
Yeah,
I don't like writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you keep doing it, then they're done. They're done. And the only,
if you're a writer for long enough, you end up telling yourself that plenty. So
that is true too.
You're always hardest on your own work then.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
yeah.
I think a question that can be asked is, what does my kid get out of, being in these classes? Is he going to learn how to write? Is she going to learn how to, create amazing stories and things like that? Like, what are we doing here? And I think, again, I feel like one of the biggest emphasis is that creativity and that art form and things like that. And it's kind of, I don't really see, that doesn't, really help my kid graduate. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with that. One thing it really can do, and this is kind of assuming that, like in the apprentice and, the higher classes, it's assuming that creative, love is there. Because obviously you have to have the love or the liking and the fascination to be able to, dive into it. But I feel like what this does, and again, this comes from somebody who did not like writing, couldn't write really well, and honestly still can't really write well. I would not have published a book if Grammarly didn't exist. But I think something that's extremely important is when you write, and you write well, when you write in-depth, detailed stories, you start to explore life and its themes, its meanings, and in all different ways. And that's the art behind art. And in doing that, you learn more about yourself. You start to come more to terms with who you are as a person, what you value as a person, what you think of the world and the things that happen around you. And honestly, there isn't a better thing that you could do as somebody who's teaching and encouraging. I've had so many kids in these past couple of classes since we've revamped the writing class where I'll ask them, well, do you realize that in setting up this plot line, this is what you're trying to say, in depth, metaphorically? And they go, oh my gosh, no, I didn't realize that. And I'm like, well, is that what you meant to say? And they're like, yeah, I guess so. I guess that is what I'm trying to say. And it just blows them away as they come to realize how, impactful. And that's why, the difference between AI creating things and humans creating things is when a human creates something, it has a weight to it. Because you know that those letters that were put down by a person who, are feeling and creating all of those things that you are reading or you're looking at or you're watching. And that's just so important. And I mean, even I've written stories where I've come up with story ideas that I've told people about, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so sad. Why would you, create a story about that? Like, are you doing okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing fine. But like, this is just how I think about something. Like, I think it's interesting to think about and to talk about, because it's a way to express yourself. It's a way for other people to see how you expressed yourself, and maybe it's a way for them to then express themselves, because they don't really know how to, but then they see the things that you're creating and you're making, and they are able to feel comforted, like somebody understands what they don't quite understand yet. And I think that's really important. So I think that that's probably one of the most important and biggest things that you could get out of this class.
That's a great point.
So I know this one is really a big one here, but there is a third level to this as well.
There is. And so it is. I want to talk about this really quick. So when we were really looking at the writing class, there were some issues that were coming up this past year. Actually, it started the year before, but it was like, how do we get students where they need to be at their level? How would that work? And I am going to tell you that Travis, I turned to him and to Kaelyn and to some of our other writers and said, guys, what would that look like? How would that happen? Well, Travis really sat down and started looking at it, and he came up with 3 classes, 3 different levels. And then we talked about, well, what would that look like? And he really, everybody was inputting, because honestly, I'm a teacher. I'm like, we sit down, I do the lessons, and we go on. But when I went to the students who are actually participating, the ones that are, these kids are I had a group of kids that are creating book after, okay, let me rephrase that. Novel after novel after novel. They're writing multiple books at a time, right? I said, okay, guys, what is your idea? What is it you need in these classes that would make a difference? What worked? What didn't work? Well, they sat down, and Travis and kind of put it all together, and he came up with the 3 classes. So the first is a novice, because everybody needs to start somewhere, but what would that look like? Then he said, okay, between there and the 3rd class, what do they need? What do they need to get in? What do they need to grow, right? And so he put all that together. So once you get into the apprentice class, and it does need to be assessed, because you need to have some basic things. And I'll tell you, Travis is right. You have to really, really want to write and enjoy it. It can't be, Mom said you had to take the class. Because you know what? You can have just as much fun and grow a lot in the novice class and not have that passion. And that's okay. But then there's some who are like, okay, wait, maybe one day I want to write a book. Okay, let's get in the apprentice class and start learning all these basic things and have fun and learn how to be a community. Because I'll tell you what, we've learned that you can be a published author and not have the community and not write really great books. Books that really would have, if you could have found somebody to give you some great, truthful input, it would have changed that book into an amazing story. And that's what these kids are doing. So when they get to that point and they're like, okay, we've all got it going on, I'm ready to write a book. And they usually have been writing along with us, and they're like, okay, how about this? Well, we take those and you start writing a book. You start kind of working on that, and then you submit it. And we have our team, and we all read it, and we're like, are they ready? They've got the passion. They've already got a book started. And then we then go to the next level, and that is the master's class. And let me tell you, when you're in there, sorry, Mom. Sorry, Dad. Good luck if you can get time to teach them anything else.
This is going to be a few hours.
Yeah, the Think, Write, all the time. You can't go nowhere without them writing. Travis has got books on books. They've got stuff down on. They're writing ideas, and then they come together, and then they're meeting outside of class because then they're sharing more ideas with their groups or other groups. It's just the way it goes. So I'm sorry, but that's kind of how it goes. But Travis is going to actually be a teacher in the master's class. And so I'll let Travis tell you more about that.
Well, and I mean, that's what's so interesting about the master's class, you know, the top level, because it's kind of existed in form where I've, you know, done meetings, and I kind of, that was kind of the me finding ways to get around the class system so I could do, you know, my own specific things with my peers. But ever since this system has, you know, been redone and recreated, the master's class actually doesn't really exist yet. Like, it's more of a concept, and it's never had its first official class yet, because I think that's an interesting thing. You're like, well, okay, what do they teach in the master's class? Well, they don't really teach a whole lot necessarily, like in form of that like teacher-student relationship, because the teacher, which I would say I'm probably the main teacher of the master's class, I'm just a student. I'm just a member of the master's class. I just write in the master's class with all of my other peers and all the other people. And yeah, in that master's class, you no longer just have, you know, a love and an interest in writing. You are now, if you are in the master's class, you're trying to write books. You are trying to write books, and you are trying to get them published. And you're trying to build a name for yourself as an author and as a creator of stories. That is your goal, you know, in the master's class, which of course, you know, not everybody, you know, will naturally move up there if, you know, they don't want to. And of course, that's not, you know, what you have to do at all. But it's basically a club room where all of these people who have the same goal will get together and read their stories, and they all have the same passion of like, I really want to make sure my story is really good, so please read it and see what you think. And then because we share the same want, I will really read your story and make sure it's really good, and we'll write together, and we'll talk about ideas, and we'll break some things down, and it's just so in depth. And my hope is that, you know, we're able to get Miss Abby Hayden, who, you know, works with art and things like that, to have her pop in every once in a while and help with book covers. And then, you know, maybe we can have, I would really love to figure out if we could work with, you know, a publishing somebody to really like create a cool system where it's almost like an academy. And once you graduate to the master's class, you can actually like get your book and have some notoriety behind it, which I think would just be so fun. But it really is just the official thing. And one thing I'm really excited for is once we get, you know, masters, I would love for them to do kind of what I'm doing, where I come down and I co-teach and I help with lessons and things like that. I would love to get masters who, and that's the goal of these classes as well. The number one goal is to have somebody start at the apprentice class or the novice class, and then move up to the apprentice, and then move up to the masters. I feel like that's the biggest goal, is to see somebody all the way through. And then it would be so fun once they get the, you know, feedback and the help in the master's class, that, you know, the class they are a part of. It would be so fun to say, okay, can you come down real quick on Tuesday to talk with the guys in the novice class and talk about your experience, or, you know, how you were able to figure out Google Docs. Oh, do you think I could get you to come for a Tuesday and maybe talk about what you think of the fantasy genre in the apprentice class? Would you mind doing that real quick? It would be so fun to have people who have ascended the ladder and they've done the things and they've been through all the steps, and have them come down every once in a while and talk with the other students. I think it would just be so fun. But yeah, I mean, the master's class, it doesn't really have lessons. It is a personalized club, basically, of people who are wanting to publish and write books that are all working together to complete that goal. But then also, you know, to be able to go back down and help some of the people out every once in a while, and, you know, really be a part of this writing class. And that's another thing that's so important too. Once you get up to the master's level, not only have you built up a lot of your writing skills, but now you've built up a lot of your social skills. Like, you really are able to open up and talk with other people and accept information and give information. And like, these people are your friends. These are the people you work with. Like, all of these skills are building up at the higher and higher you get, I would say.
And I want to express on that too a little bit. One of the things about the master's class is it's kind of like taking the apprentice class. When we break up into those breakout rooms, we are teaching the students how to communicate to one another. So we're building those skills, very important skills, of how to ask the right questions, what to look for in somebody else's story, what to look for in their own stories. So we teach them all of these things, and then they take that and apply it within their conversations. Well, when you build a community of writers, they start sharing their experiences, right? Then it helps others become better writers. They're helping each other, literally becoming better writers. So what happens when they then move on with their books or their novels up into the master's class? It's kind of like putting that on steroids. I mean, it's huge. When I saw that with this group, with Travis's group that we'd had, over a couple of years, I had the biggest aha ever. And I've been teaching for nearly, over 25 years. And I was like, that is what's missing. It's not just that they're peers. It's that they have the same love of writing. They have the same experiences, but they have different life things or different skills that they've all been working on. Because these kids at this point, they're Googling different things like, okay, how would I make my character say this or do this or move from this point to that? How do you make, a second character do this or that? They're Googling, they're researching, they're out there doing the work. Let me tell you, I can't teach them this because everybody has a different thing that they're working on. But then they bring all of that together and they share it. And they're like, wow, I really needed that for my character. Or I need that to understand my setting. Or I really need to understand that for that genre. And they are sharing all of that openly. They communicate it. Wow, guys, here we are. All of those connectors from the beginning to the end is working. And I tell you, building that community of learners that share their experiences, you can't get that anywhere else. And it's not just here, but it takes a lot of time and effort. And you all know, because I've been doing this forever, kids at this age, that's not what's going to be happening unless they have a common interest. And for all of these guys, it's writing, okay? And it's phenomenal. And of course, all of us are really glad when, we don't just see this on the screen, because Miss Dorothy says you have to keep your screen on. Then they get so far and they might just show their eyes, but that's all you see, or their eyebrows. We're trying to figure that out because they're shy. And writing, like any art form, is very personal. And you know what? For them to be able to share their emotions and their feelings in their writing, and then find out that, oh, everybody's doing it and we're all doing it in a positive way. Because let me tell you, these kids are phenomenal at going, wow, I love that. And they're also like, hey, have you thought about this in their story? Because I'm not sure that's working, but what if you try this? Does that make sense? And again, all the writers are like, hey, it's your story. You do what you want. But this is something I see. And they're like, okay with it. And it helps build that. It just builds their confidence, guys. It's so, so amazing to watch these kids go from shy, introverted, scared to even be in a class, because it is on a camera, on a screen, and everybody can see you. And it's different than being just in a classroom where you can sit in the back and hope nobody looks your way. Here, everybody sees you. So that's intimidating. But I tell you what, I am 100% in every class we do in the co-op is that we always are positive. You can still correct things and be, positive, but we are always thoughtful of each other, and the students have to do the same. And I'll be honest, we've been doing this 4 years, going into our 5th year, and I'm so proud of the families that are here, and we all want the same thing: is that we, extend that godly. Communication. We talk, we always use God's word when we're having discussions because He is our main principal. He is the overseer, true overseer. And we do everything according to His principles. So I just wanted to say that, but I'm telling you, that master class is awesome. So I just wanted to share that.
I'm glad you did. No, and I thank you all for this. And again, and just being able to have a conversation about this, because I think sometimes as parents, I can read a little description or see a little blurb about something, but it doesn't necessarily give me like the full essence of what something is. So I think being able to sit down and have these conversations and have them with you teachers, right? Y'all are the ones who are there doing all this stuff. Like, I think this is great to be able to sit down and have a conversation, get to know you all a little more, get to understand why the classes are, what the classes are, how the classes are, kind of get just a little more information in that point, and to know that, if my child's shy, if my child's struggling, if my child's this, if my child's that, like, that's okay, and there's still a place, and it's going to be in an environment that is here to uplift and encourage, in that process, as the whole goal at the HMH Academy is to be a resource to work alongside the homes and alongside the families, to really help in enriching your kids. Yes, through these activities they do here, but it's to help and enrich your family and your homeschool and what you're, doing there. And so I really appreciate you all taking the time to break this down in a little more detail. So that way we have this as a resource out there, all school year long, that as a parent, even if you thought maybe at the beginning of the year your kid wasn't ready, but then you come back to it, or whatever it might be, it helps to give us, I know sometimes on the parent end of it, I'm like, can you just explain this to me a little bit? Like, I want to make sure I'm picking the right thing or whatever it is. So thank you all for this. I think this class, again, this was really what started off our whole co-op adventure. When I voluntold you to work with Travis on his thing when you thought you were retired, and then I created a whole co-op off of it. But I think, it has been, again, I almost wish I could go back and show everybody what it was like when I first had you and Travis working together, because to see where it started to, him and his books and everything now that he's doing, he's got his second book almost done, working on the next one, seeing all this come together. It's like, wow. And it's not just you, Travis, but it's all the kids. Kaylyn's story is amazing. Your sister Lily is in this class. Anytime we go out to eat, Travis and Lily sit next to each other and the notebooks come out, right? And it's working through this story or that story or whatever. I mean, they're always working on it. And even seeing the younger kids, working to get up into this and stuff, I think has been a really cool thing. So thank you all for your hard work. And Travis, you had such a love for this writing that you were like, let's revamp it, let's do more, and I think the kids are really going to benefit from it. So thank you guys for this and for laying it all out for us. And here's to another year, some awesome stories coming out here with all these kids. So and again, giving them that tool set to be able to take those thoughts, because we do not teach our kids what to think, we teach them how to think. And so helping them take those thoughts and connect them and get them out is going to be something that, we're training disciples, and you kids are the future, and for as long as the Lord, has us here. And we need to be training up kids that can think and can stand firm and can stand up and speak truth in life and people. And I think this is all a great kind of foundational building block to all of those things. So very proud of all of you guys. You're doing a great job. So thank you all for that. And hopefully this can help. If anybody has any questions, of course, they can always email hmhcoop@gmail.com and get that to you. So you guys can always answer any specific questions anyone might have. But I think this will be a great help to the families out there checking out these different classes and seeing, what ways it might be a great fit for them and their families as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.